Hello. Hello. Anyone around here speak basketball?
This is Abby Silver.
Vision 6-9. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Freddie Rivas, and my good friend, the best producer in the world, on the other side, maybe with a new laptop. I don't know. What is your name, sir?
That's right. I'm Matt. I am your producer, and this is actually the last episode on the old computer because the new one is it got here about an hour ago.
Woo!
So I just don't have it in me to rush it. But next week, oh boy, that's exciting.
Listen, I know Matt well, and he's a gadget master. So the fact that you're here with me right now doing this pod and you got a new laptop an hour ago, I'm honored. I'm honored that you didn't cancel. You know what I mean? And I'm not filming an unboxing right now.
Oh, God. Yeah, no problem.
Matty D, you are the greatest. Let's get started here. Let's bring on guest number one. Kris, let me go to you first. And 3 games, right? We got the tough loss to Utah. We got, I would say, a pretty decent win against Orlando, who's been playing some good ball. Detroit win, which is hard to navigate. I mean, it's like curse breaking, I guess, but there's no Cade. Whatever, Detroit is fully tanking. And yeah, so do you think the Raptors are much better with Poeltl on the team, and is that enough to get you excited for the end of the season, for the final?
I think like in the long term, at least towards the end of the season, I think the Raptors will be a better team. I don't know if it'll be fast enough for them to get into, like, definitely not like a 6th seed, maybe the play-in, but I think I like having Poeltl back on the team, not because like it's nice to see Yak and Skills back together and the vibes and everything, but I think like because Yak is a more veteran presence now. He's put in a few more years under Pop and the Spurs. I think that him being on the team and having a proper center allows the rest of the team to be just slightly more aggressive defensively, if that makes sense. Like, because you have that added extra experience with him, bringing him on board. I think that he brings a knowledge of the culture, both like Spurs and Raptors culture, to the team to help a lot of the younger players. Like, I can definitely see him helping out like someone like Precious on the team, or someone like Koloko. And then of course, like, you do have that chemistry with Pascal and them being such close buds. Like, that's nothing but good for a team. Like, if you have 2 important players that really like each other, that's just gonna, like, I think that's definitely gonna help the locker room as well. And just sort of like have the team convalesce a little bit more. So I'm very happy with Yak on the team. I don't know if it's going to be a huge difference, but I think it's more of a long-term thing. I don't see Yak leaving next season. I think his contract is either up this season or next season. I see him staying with the Raptors for a little bit longer, at least as long as Pascal is on the team.
Yeah, he is an unrestricted free agent this year, but 2 things you said I feel like really resonate with me. Like, part of the reason I'm bringing this up as a talking point on the pod is my whole family were hardcore Raptors fans, right? And I'd say mostly positive. And my little brother Thomas was he was sort of talking about how this season it's been hard to, and my mom too, actually. Shout out Kathy, what's up? We were talking over lunch, like how, it's been hard, or they were saying it's been hard to get excited for this Raptors team. And there's been a lot of stretches where, I think people are wondering, do these guys really like each other? Or is this like are they kind of like punching the clock? And I think that chemistry point is really big. Like, just bring that veteran presence, that veteran presence, like you said, is really important. I think I was listening to Sean Woodley's Locked On Raptors, and I think it was Sean who was saying that Jakob in an interview was sort of talking about how he got a lot better as a Spur. It was hard for us to notice, but he got to have one-on-one sessions with Tim Duncan. So I think we're bringing in a player that has a lot of skill, fills a lot of our needs, and it's going to help this team a lot. I think in the short term and the long term. But yeah, this question, I wanted to bring it up because I feel like it's fair for fans, whether you are like, I want to be as bad as I can for a draft pick, or I want to trade all these guys, or I don't want to trade anyone. I think it's fair for people to be frustrated. We have so many close losses. There's a certain type of like stubbornness that's hard to put our finger on. Like, we haven't had a real center for years. And I do think there's some frustration in the fan base that's warranted. I think a lot of it, some of it rather is, hysterical a little bit, but I want to focus. I want to validate the people who are frustrated. Okay, Derick, let me go to you. How much better are we with Jakob? Are we pushing sixth place? Is that crazy? Are we in the play-in? Are we not going to make the playoffs still? How much does it matter for your excitement?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think he makes us that much better. But the one thing I will say that he does make that much better is the vibes in the locker room.
Which is important.
It's to me, I think, more so than you can have rough patches, you can be up and down, there can be some inconsistency. Good teams, mature teams with veteran leadership and good coaching and good management can navigate that, right? Like, we've seen other teams do it before. But if the vibes are off in the locker room and guys just aren't getting along, or it feels like things are off, and some of the friction that comes with losing becomes kindling for a fire, it becomes a larger issue. And I do genuinely think that with Jakob being there, I do think that the vibes are a lot better. And I do think, like, even the game against the Spurs, when he stayed back late here at the arena, I was at the game, and we were chatting with some folks who were speaking with him, and he was just so excited to be back here and to be with Pascal. And I know him and Pascal both had like a really good long talk after the game, just talking about like what's going on, the latest rumors, what's actually happening. The fact that, despite the time and the distance, that Pascal still remained close with him, and that he still remained close with other guys on the team, and that, he has that familiarity and being around them in the summertime and at the Rico Hines runs and things like that. I think it really helps for team building and team chemistry. I think on the court, that will show. And I think in the few games that he's been here, it looks, even in that Utah game, which they should not have choked away.
Oh, God.
Like, it was a horrible, horrible loss. And it really just kind of summarized this season in a nutshell for the Raptors. For three quarters, they looked like a different team. They looked happy. They looked free.
It was exciting.
Pascal looked so excited to turn the corner on a defender and not have to worry about a second or third body being thrown his way, because there was a 7-foot man who was screening for you, who legitimately was giving you some breathing room so you didn't have to ISO as much. And I think that, to me, is where you're going to see the difference. Like, he does make us better in the pick and roll. He does make us better with rim protection. He does make us better switching on defense. And all those things are great, but he can't fix everything that's wrong with this Raptors team, and it would be unfair for anyone to put that on him, even with a full season, let alone 23 games that are left for the rest of this year. So I think as good as he is going to be and has been in the few games that we've seen him, and he'll get better as he learns more defenses in the schemes. I don't know if it's something that's going to drastically change what we've seen over the course of 57 games so far, with and without him. So, I don't think you're crazy to say 6th seed. I actually don't. I know our schedule is like the 5th hardest, and you're looking at who's left and all that stuff. But I could realistically see this team going, something like 15-8 to close the year out. Because if you look at the games, like the amount of games that we've lost by 3 points or less, Jakob could be that difference maker, right?
I think so.
And if you win some of those games a little bit more than you lose, because you'll still probably lose some, because we're still the Raptors and we still suck at things. The law of averages is eventually going to work out in our favor a little bit, and I do think we'll get some of those games. So is it possible for us to get to maybe somewhere around 43 wins? Yeah, I think so. And I don't think it's unrealistic that, like, if the Knicks and they fall from where they are in 6th, that we could probably 43 wins around ish could be good enough to get you 6th or 7th in this East if they, hold the way that I think they will.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I'll also add to, him improving everyone's like life on the court. I feel like he's he doesn't demand a lot, and he does a lot for others on the court. To me, there's a similarity. If you're kind of following the Masai trajectory, obviously it's very different than the way we built last time. There's tons of differences, but in some ways, I think that Jakob, it's giving me the same vibes as when the Raptors got Serge Ibaka, and obviously they're completely different players. But it's sort of like it's a veteran who's kind of tried, tested, and true, who's going to bring some substantial qualities to the team. And to your point, I think he's making Pascal's life easier. He's making Fred's life easier. Obviously, as we get to more competitive situations, we'll figure out some of the deficiencies like spacing. But even to that end, I think some of the spacing is improved when you have more room on a screen. Fred's had some pretty clean 3-point looks since Poeltl's been here that I haven't really seen this season. And I'm really excited to see what those looks like for look like for Gary. Integrating OG back in, assuming and hoping they can kind of heal well. And the Raptors aren't too unlucky, but I think what I'm excited about is to see a more cohesive, happy team. Whether we finish in, I'll say for me, less than 8th will be a pretty big disappointment. Based on getting Poeltl and investing in his core. But I think regardless of that, I've never been at the camp that, putting a young team in the playoffs is a waste in any way. So, I think we'd beat the Bucks or the Celtics? No, I don't. But I feel like it can, how you lose really matters. And, if we are able to take one of those teams to 6 games and it's competitive, that could really change the narrative that, that this core's not worth investing in. So, in that sense, I am really excited. How much better are we with Poeltl? We'll see. But I think we are better. I think we're all sort of agreeing that to a degree we're better. Is that like a smidgen, or is that a big deal? I'm not sure yet. But let's stick with you, Derick, on the next one. And which Raptor do you think will have the strongest finish to the season?
So I know that there's a few good options out there. Like
Mhm.
obviously Pascal has had a pretty amazing season, arguably his best season individually, barring injuries. Obviously, folks like Gary are in a contract year, and Scotty has improved more in this latter half of the season compared to where he started out earlier in the year. But I think it's Fred. I honestly think it's Fred. I think it's Fred because he's the one that has more at stake here than
Mhm.
pretty much any other person on the team that could be potentially heading into free agency or even potentially being traded. He's in a
Right.
contract year. He's older than most of the guys on the team besides Pascal. And honestly, I feel like ever since, I don't know if he's like chatted with Allen Iverson or what, but ever since he started rocking that arm sleeve, something switched in him. It was like a baby was born again.
I mean, he might have a baby on the way again.
Maybe
I think he does
does.
actually.
He
But yeah.
probably does, but yeah, like I do think that he's looked a bit more like himself more recently and more back to the all-star Fred that we're used to. And I know there were a lot of people that said, oh, he lost a step, he just doesn't have it, he's taxed physically from being run into the ground from all the minutes over the last few years. And I totally get that, and the criticisms of him are fair. But I do think he will probably have the strongest finish just looking at how he's been playing and what he's building towards. And I also think the addition of Yak actually helps him in that aspect. And you mentioned it, Freddie, earlier, but I think beyond just the looks of it, Fred, whether you want to keep him on the team and re-sign him or you plan on doing some sort of sign-in trade, which is what I imagine the Raptors may do if they ultimately decide that this isn't the way that they want to move forward, he is going to look like much more of a true point guard with Jakob than without him, because he's going to have a screener. He's going to have somebody who operates well in the pick and rolls. He's going to have somebody who has good hands around the rim and can finish well. And all of those things are going to make Fred look like a better point guard or a more truer point guard than he actually is, because he feels more like a shooting guard, hybrid point guard. But he's a willing passer if he needs to be, but he's more of a shooter when his shot is going, and he'll have those better looks, so his numbers will go up, his percentages will be better, his assists will be better, and I think ultimately he will finish probably the strongest this season.
I love it. I love that you're betting on Fred. I think he has been, he's definitely been the scapegoat. He gets the scapegoat of the year award for a lot of Raptors fans. I mean, I can't deny he struggled in some ways, but I'm just going to read these out. If you're someone that has been really focused on Fred's percentages, last year, 20.3 points a game. This year, 19.7. Last year, 6.7 assists a game. This year, 6.6. Last year, 0.403 field goal percentage. This year, 0.394. And the big difference is 3-point percentage. Last year, he was 0.377. This year, he's 0.344. So his hot January and February as well has really brought him back up to right on league average 3. We know he's better than that, but I think if you were in the camp of like Freddie has somehow like lost his shot forever, I think you probably need to reevaluate that before you're just flat out wrong. So that's my belief in Freddie. He doesn't seem like a complacent guy to me, and like you were saying, he has all the reasons in the world to have a strong end to the season. I love it. I love the Freddie love. Kris, who's your candidate to have a strong finish to the year?
I do believe Fred is the correct answer, and going back to your point about his hot January and February, I think the fact that Fred was still heavily rumored on the trade market still says something about him as a player. Like, he's seen, at least on the rumor mill, like NBA teams still see a lot of value in Fred as a player, whether it's his shooting, his playmaking, his leadership on the court. I think there's a lot of value there in Fred, and I think Fred is entitled to a bit of a slump. I think Pascal was the scapegoat a couple of seasons ago, and people were really ragging on him, especially after his performance. So I think it's okay if Fred has a similar season. Like, not every season's going to be a consistent uphill trajectory. And now you see Pascal, and he's having his best individual season ever. Just as sort of like a dark horse pick, however, I can definitely see OG finishing pretty strong. Especially, and kind of because, as Derick mentioned earlier, because you have Yak on the team, that gives a lot of pressure, at least when he comes back, a lot of pressure off of OG to be defensive, like to to flex those defense muscles, to do what he's really, really good at, to have that extra person to sort of share the load. So I can definitely see OG benefiting from Yak's presence a great deal, and building up his value, because I think he's either on a player option. I think he's up for renewal either this season or next season as well. So I think he would stand to be motivated to perform a little bit better defensively too, and be a little more aggressive, and just have other people to play off of, and have a little more spacing, and just more room for him to do things that he does really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think OG is set up well here, and Yak does. He really does. I'm glad we started with Yak, because he really does play into all of this. He lessens the load for so many players on this team. I'll put my hand up and say that I, more than anything, wanted another shooter at the deadline. But I acknowledge we needed a center, and it's just, it's showing me how much better it is for everyone. Precious, Scotty, and I think OG is going to get more open looks, and also have to do less bruising in the paint, and do more work on the perimeter. Right, we're already seeing the Precious do a lot of that, a lot more kind of perimeter defending, and not having to get in foul trouble all the time. My pick is actually Scotty. I think that sophomore slump that is thrown around a lot, and I think that we actually did see it to a certain degree with Scotty, but I think it was this really, I've been talking about this, all year. I think that it was this really convoluted thing, back in the day, right, with Dwayne Casey, and you can say whatever you want about Casey, but I think one thing that I loved about him is that he was like he was like a metronome. He was like, if you're in a studio, he was like the type of drummer who could just, like, everything was so unbelievably consistent to a fault, right? But he used to hand out roll cards to all the players and say, like, Norm, this is what I expect of you. 8 minutes of this. Fred, you're backing up Kyle. Whatever. Like, he would give players really, really specific expectations. And I don't think that's the case with this current team. I think Nurse it's way more sort of read and react, and like, hey, if you got the ball, do this. If you think it's a good shot, do it. If you want to bring it up, that's fine. Fred can play off guard. And it's like, it's all good, but also at the same time, it leaves players sometimes like, it's a good development tool in a way, but I think also at the same time, it can be confusing. And I think Fred and Scotty have had some shared sort of struggles, like knowing what to do when. And I think you've also seen the, Raptors fan base sort of be like Camp Fred or Camp Scotty this year. And to me, it's not a major coincidence that they both started playing their best offensive basketball at the same time. And I think, with Yak, we're going to see a lot more, just like, ease of play for Scotty. He's going to enjoy, handling the ball more in the backup units. He's going to enjoy guarding centers less, and just being more disruptive. Like, I just think that the fourth quarter Scotty thing, I think is really gonna end well. And I expect some of his bigger numbers, some of his bigger games coming up here. I think, the fact that just that little bit of ease in the pressure is going to be huge for a guy like Scotty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take. Any other, before we move on, any other players that you feel like, that either of you feel like we just like haven't talked about at all that deserve a little bit of love? No. Okay.
Well,
Oh,
I have one. I just wanted
sure,
to be
sure. Yeah.
polite to see if Kris had anybody to say first. I still think it's Precious. I started the season really high on Precious,
Yep.
and I think about how he ended last year, like
Yeah.
shooting 40% from three and
Yeah.
just being like a world record on offense and on defense at times. And it's unfortunate that he was robbed of some time this year because of that ankle injury, because he was really like starting to turn the corner and playing a lot better. And then like once he came back, it was kind of like you have to readjust again and figure out what your role is and figuring out like how to maneuver and navigate that situation with people that are injured or guys that are on cold streaks. And so he hasn't quite been able to find that consistency yet. But I do think I've still loved his defense and what he's brought. He's still a Jekyll Hyde guy. Like sometimes
Big time.
it's like, man, I love what you can do on one end. If you could just sort of even match 75% of that on the other, it would be incredible. And then sometimes it's so frustrating because you're like, I see that you can do this. I know that you can do this. It's just being able to put it all together. And I think part of the problem is that people forget how young Precious is. Precious is basically around the same age as Scotty. It's just
Yeah.
that we don't view him that way because in our heads, it's like, oh, well, he was drafted earlier and he was on the Heat. And in our heads, it's like we just view like Precious on the Heat was like he was there for like 2-3 years. It's like he had a year with them and he didn't do a whole ton. And if you look at like videos of him when he was on the Heat, I'm sure they were super frustrated with him because they're like, you have all the raw physical skills and athleticism that you need to be a good NBA player, but it doesn't translate. And now we're starting to see that development. So I think if there's anybody that one can hopefully put it together and really build a good, strong campaign through the last little bit of this, it's Precious as my other dark horse.
Yeah, I love Precious. You know, anyone that Masai is like obsessed with, that he's just like, I need this guy. You know, I'm a big fan of, like, you know, just I was just looking at some stats while you were saying that. And just look at this progress. So year one for Precious, free throw percentage, 509. Year two, 595. Year three, 691. So that just shows you just his free throws, right? So it's just like, you know, he clearly has preposterous athletic skills that, that classic combination of kind of like you're too fast for someone that big. And, for someone that's that fast, you're also kind of too strong. And it's this weird mix of like, athletes they're usually more one or the other. And he's right in this difficult to guard balance. And, I first of all, I'd love to see it. And I don't think it's crazy to say, like, you know, people forget what injuries do. 23 games. He missed 23 games. He tore a ligament in his ankle. That's not a joke. If that happened to me, I'd tell the guys I play rec ball with, like, I'm done forever. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I'm out. That's it. I mean, I'm 36, but even still, I'd be like, that's it for me. I golf now, you know? It's too expensive, but you know, whatever. Some other sport. Bird watching. I'm a bird watcher now. Okay. Let's Kris, unless you got anyone. I think we're probably good to move on to some NBA stuff.
Precious was my pick as well.
Okay.
I'm big on Precious. I've been a Precious fan since he was on the Heat, since they were in preseason. I'm a big believer in Precious Chua. I invested in that stock early, and I'm happy to see him developing as well as he has. And yes, he's only in his third season, so there's a lot more room for growth there for him. Like, I'm very excited to see him develop as a player.
Yeah, and you know, just to put him back on like the bench, even it's pretty big, right? Like, just like, hey, there's, you know, yeah, again, Jakob's here. He's doing a lot of what you were doing, and he's just that much further along. So less pressure. You could, you know, coming off the bench, and dunk on somebody, or rip down some boards, or you know, hit an open three. But, just to keep this baby under an hour, I'm going to bring Maddie D in here, and we'll wrap this baby up. Let me say thanks to everyone who listens to this podcast and for supporting us. You know, do that. I don't say this a lot, but do that nice thing for us. If you like the pod, give us a review on iTunes or whatever. Maybe support us on Patreon. You know what I mean? But let me go to you first, Kris. What do you got going on? What do you want to plug?
I got nothing to plug. I'm just here for a good time.
Hey, that's okay. I'm into that. Derick, what's up? You got anything going on you want to plug?
Much like Kris, I don't have anything major to plug, but I will plug a few things. So as always, support your local broadcaster. Being informed is important, so always stay on top of that. And of course, support women in sports. Support anybody that's a part of a marginalized group or a meeting at an intersection. I think we don't have enough of those voices. We need more of them, and I would love to see more of them. And then the last thing I will say before I cut it is bring a WNBA team to Toronto, please.
Yes. Yeah, hell yeah. I'm going to be annoying about that for sure. And I'll be there at the big audition preseason game. But Maddie D, sorry I didn't leave you a lot of time here. Let people know what they need to know about us, about Raptors Republic.
Yeah, if you listen to the episode on the Podcatchers, thank you. Please rate, as Freddie said. That really helps us out. It helps out the Rapcast. And if you watch us on YouTube, we put up a couple of segments. There's a whole other episode that you can listen to on the Podcatchers. So go to Spotify or Apple or whatever you like and listen to the full episode there. As always, go to raptorsrepublic.com for all their articles, the paywall, and dunkspodcast.com. That's our own calling card. That's our own website, so you can listen and report there as well.
I love it. And a sweet goodbye kiss to Maddie D's old laptop.
Oh, God.
We'll see where we're at next week. But again, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Derick. Thank you, Kris. Thank you, Maddie. Maddie, if you feel like we're done and we're good to go, please just give me those words I love so much. Okay.
Listen to full episodes of the Confederacy of Dunks only on the Rapcast.